What do you swear you saw, but have no proof? You/old broke grouch responded. I was staying for a week at a guest house on some property up in the middle of nowhere, Washington state. I'm sitting on the porch early in the morning drinking a cup of coffee and I see a young deer in the yard about 20 yards from me. So I just stay still and take it in. Then along comes this rabbit hopping in and they notice each other. The rabbit hops up toward the deer and the deer cautiously puts its nose toward the rabbit. The rabbit gets up on its hind legs and they slowly inch their noses closer and closer to each other. Then they touch and the deer hops straight up in the air. The rabbit runs in a full circle around the deer and then stops. Then they repeated the exact same thing. They did this like 3 times, then ran back into the woods together. This was before cell phones and I'm glad it was. It was just something for me and me only and I am grateful for it. You/gambling gambit responded. At work on the railroad, going down the main line at 40 miles per hour, middle of the day, middle of the woods. Watched a massive thing leap from one tree line to the other, completely cleared a span of about 30 feet without touching the ballast. It was on all 4s and muscular, bear-shaped but much bigger. And its skin was fleshy pink. I jumped out of my seat when I saw it. My engineer didn't as he was looking at me while talking. Told him what I saw, described it expecting to be given shit about it. To my surprise, he told me 2 weeks before a different conductor he was working with saw the same thing in right the same area. Never heard another thing about it. You/champion 153 responded. When I was a kid, LD sometimes get up in the middle of the night and go downstairs to get a drink or snack. On the way, I had to pass by this dark hallway that led to my dad's office. I was always scared to look down that hallway at night because I had this fear that I was going to see a small child standing there. I have no idea where the thought came from, outside of my hyperactive imagination. Well, fast forward many years and me and my wife and kids are staying in that house during a visit. My daughter is sleeping in my dad's office. As you may have already figured out, one night I'm heading down to get a snack. I look down that hallway as I pass by it, and what do I see? My child standing there. Scared the crap out of me. You/nmink responded. I saw what I can only describe as seeing a star dying. Sometime back before 2015, not exactly sure when, my brother had a friend over for a sleepover. Because of this, we were sleeping in the living room that night. We lived out in the country, so the night sky was very clear, and our living room had very large windows facing away from the urban glow. I couldn't sleep, so I was just staring out at the stars. Then, I saw one of the stars I was looking at erupt. It formed a large, thick ring that expanded to several times its original size. Then, it very quickly stopped and collapsed back in on itself and vanished. Honestly, I know it doesn't make any sense for it to have really been a star exploding and then collapsing, but that's what it looked like. I still have no idea what it really was. You/Tyson Tesla responded. I saw one of the modified stealth helicopters that were used in the Bin Laden raid. I used to live near McCord Air Force Base growing up. During the 90s we'd occasionally see AF-117 or B-2 flying during the day. But one night in 09 or 10 I was hanging out on the shore of a lake doing teenage things and heard something weird. I was along a flight path and nearish to the aforementioned airbase, so I was used to planes and helicopters flying past. I'm familiar with what Chinooks and MH-60s sound like, but this was different. Something was off. That's when I saw 2 helicopters with normal lights break through the tree line. I'll assume Apache, but it was dark and I'm just guessing there. However, between them was a 3rd helicopter with no lights at all. Almost like the other 2 were escorting it. I know it's incredibly rare for any aircraft to be granted permission to fly with no lights. And again, it sounded weird I could differentiate between the normal thwomp-thwomp of the 2 escorts and the mysterious 3rd craft that had a much more muffled thwip-thwip. Anyways, in 2011 SEAL Team 6 crashed one of their modified stealth helicopters during the Bin Laden raid, and they had to acknowledge that the Comanche program wasn't as dead as we were led to believe. Ever since then, LVE been convinced that's what I saw that night a few years prior. You/PLC Duck 497 responded. I was at my parents', sitting in the living room. They have a dog and I was looking at her, waiting for her to give me her attention. After a few minutes, she looked at me. I wanted to teach her something unnecessary, my parents would wonder about later. I began to raise my eyebrows. She looked at me still. I did it more often. She was still very curiously looking at me. I went on raising my eyebrows over and over again for at least a few minutes. After staring at me for a really long time, she suddenly raised her eyebrows. I found it so funny and couldn't believe she really copied me. When I told my family, no one believed me and my parents' dog would not do it again. This was 3 years ago, and from time to time I sit in front of her, raising my eyebrows. But nothing. U/bulky_try5904 responded. My uncle walking right before he died. My uncle was a quadriplegic my entire life. He was in an accident while I was in utero. I was very fond of him. He was in the hospital very ill and I was at home states away. I looked at the head of my bed and saw him walk in my room, wave and walk out. He was so chill about it, it didn't dawn on me what I saw. My mom called me in hysterics about an hour later telling me he died. Everyone said it was a shame I didn't know him before the accident or see him standing. I see most of our family members right before the pass, as did my great aunt. The most heartbreaking one was hearing her say, "I'm hard of hearing so that makes it really strange, it's your turn Ole girl. You can do it." Ole girl and weird girl were her nicknames for me. U/lucky still 2215 responded. 1. The ghost of a War of 1812 era in broad daylight in my mom's backyard, when I was about 35. Yes, I was wide awake, I was reading in a lounge chair. He was only there long enough for me to say, "Oh, you startled me." He wasn't frightening, and by the time my brain clued in, he was gone. The house was in Toronto, and he was gazing in the direction of Grenadier Pond. He looked troubled, like he had a lot on his mind. To this day, I wish I knew exactly who he was. 2. A crow, walking along the sidewalk, stopping at the corner and actually looking both ways before crossing the street. There wasn't even any traffic. 3. A fairy. Yes, a fairy. I was walking along a path next to a creek near my house, and I saw this thin brownish humanoid figure about 6 or 7 inches tall jump onto a tree branch about 10 feet away from me. But when I tried to actually look at it, it was like I couldn't focus my eyes on it or even on just that part of the tree. I was unnerved, and got the heck out of there. I used to go there often for walks, and I never had an experience like that before or since. U/Count Roloff responded. Not a believer in anything supernatural, not religious, nothing like that. However, I was driving back from San Francisco one night to a friend's house. It was about 3:30 a.m. He lives in a sort of forested neighborhood in the East Bay, and the entrance to where he lives is sort tucked behind a small town, and has a one-lane road leading into it. I pull off the main road onto this one lane, and right before you enter, there's a strange crosswalk that is lit, on a street otherwise devoid of streetlights. As I'm approaching the crosswalk, I notice there is someone standing there waiting to cross. So while it's weird to see someone out this late, I of course stop and let them cross. After they do, I look at them as I'm passing, and as I perceived their face, they weren't human. Large dark black eyes, no facial features otherwise. They stared at me as Elle drove past. I got as good of a look as you can get glancing at someone as you drive past them, and years later the moment still terrifies me. The other strange thing, that crosswalk itself is odd as it leads to nowhere. The other side is just dense trees, no real path or houses or anything. I've tried to rationalize, maybe they were disfigured and preferred to be out at night when less people are around. And while I still lean towards some sort of rational explanation, I can't shake the feeling that I saw something the universe didn't mean for me to see. U/Bernicle responded. I saw a fracture in this dimension. I was waiting for the bus. I turned my head and saw the bus approach with a white pickup in front of it, so Elle looked forward and stood up. I turned my head again to wave the bus down, and there was a vertical line extending to infinity, like looking at the edge of a piece of glass. I thought my vision was going weird, and I was going to have a stroke or something, but I was perfectly fine. The bus drove through the line, and the line disappeared, but the pickup was gone. I looked up and down the street, but there was no sign of the pickup. There were no turn-offs or side streets, nothing. I got on the bus and looked out of every window as I walked down the aisle. The pickup was nowhere to be seen. U/Macrich 1980 responded. 3 years ago, heading to work, summer evening, blue skies, park near mine was full of families and kids playing. As I looked in the middle of the football field, there was suddenly nobody there. It was silent too. There was a big glossy box vehicle thing the size of a van, looked like a massive iPod case, that's my nearest description. It had an oval-shaped hole and the inside was blue, looked like neon blue light. And outside it there were 3 men in white jumpsuits with black trim, looked like the Tesla spacesuits. 2 had their helmets on and the other was holding his. He was a heavily tanned white male with short golden blonde hair. They were looking around their feet for something. They had lost. I was staring at them while walking. They all turned to look at me, so Elle looked away, and when I looked back, it had gone. It was a noise-filled park again with around 20+ kids playing football in that exact place. Freaked me out. U/Happy 5-day responded. I slept on the sofa at a friend's house. Woke up and saw someone sitting on the chair. The lights were off, but it was quite bright from the street lights. I thought it was his dad, so I said, "Hello Mr. X, what are you doing up?" He didn't respond to anything I said. He had his legs crossed and was bouncing his leg and just staring mindlessly. I went upstairs and woke up my friend and told him that his dad or some FKR was downstairs and being weird. He was mad and told me to FK off. Now at no point did I think ghost. I just thought it was someone in the house being an asshole. So I just went back to sleep. This guy just sat there. When I woke up everyone was laughing at me. I still just thought it was just some prank. He had older brothers, so I thought maybe one of his friends or some asshole. I was like, haha, okay, hilarious. You got me. It was only when his dad came down and said no one was downstairs and that he sometimes slept downstairs and heard things in the kitchen that I realized I saw a FKN ghost. You/extraterrestrial responded. I've posted this story a few times on Reddit, but when I was around 96-ish I think, I saw a weird being in my dad's girlfriend's house. I was spending the night with my sister over there and had to get up to pee. I saw a light on in the living room and it was this thing, rocking in her rocking chair. It was like the shape of a human, but completely made of white light. No features, no face. Just bright white light. It reflected off the windows and everything. Even though it didn't have a face, I felt it look at me and had the distinct impression that it felt surprised or caught. I stared at it for a minute, decided in a very kid-like way, well, fuck this, and went ahead to the bathroom. When I was done, the thing was gone and everything was dark again. Never seen anything like it before or since, but it was there and so was I. You/other divide 8683 responded. I've had my sight shift in a forest. One moment I was sitting peacefully with my BF enjoying my surroundings, the next the forest was crawling with life, like the noises of a lively gathering, with see-through beings crawling all over. It was just a split second, but reminded me of the stories of dryads and fae in general. And while my sight shifted back when my BF started talking to me, that's not where the experience ended. The next 15 minutes we heard the rustling of leaves cascade. First far away near the edge of the forest, and so closer and closer to us. Then someone would walk by us, and the leaves to the other side would rustle. It felt like an intruder alert system. This happened with several bypassers. That was one of the most memorable days I've ever had in the forest. Like I was accidentally part of another world for a moment. You/Scooby-Dooby don't you dare responded. When I was around 11 years old I had a sleepover with a friend. Middle of the night he woke me up, and when my eyes opened, I saw a ghost behind him. Then right after I see this, he told me he just saw a ghost. We freaked out, then waited eyes wide open until the morning. When we got the courage to get out of bed, we decided to go into separate rooms and draw what we both just saw. Our drawings were insanely similar. We both saw the same long wavy outfit, long thin fingers, and most notably, a head without a face. Instead of a face, there were pronounced wrinkles. In that moment I told myself, no matter what, never doubt what I just saw. Naturally, as the years pass I doubt myself more and more, but I continue to remember telling myself not to. You/apprehensive Fee 967 responded. Not my story, but someone I used to work with swears up and down he saw Bigfoot one night. He told me he was road tripping from Florida to Texas and got lost on the road one night and had to pull off and get back on track. He said he pulled off on the side of the road, across the street from an abandoned gas station to look at his map. This was back before he had a decent cell phone, and said once he got his bearings, he started to put the map away when he heard something and looked over to the gas station. He said he saw what had to be at least a 7 to 8 foot tall animal that was bent over and was rummaging through the dumpster at this abandoned gas station. He said he was so petrified that all he could do was sit there and stare, before this animal turned and made eye contact with him. He then said the animal stood there staring at him with his arms swinging, almost like a monkey, before the animal slowly backed up into the woods. He also noted this was in the middle of the night, and as this animal thing was backing into the woods, he could still see its glowing red eyes. Don't know if it's true or not, but he tells it with such detail and has fear in his eyes every time he tells it. He tells it to anyone who asks or is willing to listen, and his story never changes. You/Metro_Passer responded. During the killer clown craze sightings during 2016. One was in my backyard while my dad was on the grill cooking food. My backyard connects to the woods and was very spacious, so I would often be in the backyard just hanging out. My dad left the grill and went inside to get something, so I was in the yard by myself. As soon as he went inside, I saw 3 people with scary clown masks and backpacks just walking through the woods very close to the beginning of my property. They were at least 8 feet away from me. Well, they ended up seeing me and stopped in their tracks and just stared at me for what felt like an eternity but was probably 5 seconds with no words being exchanged whatsoever. Then one of them went up to the other clown, who happened to probably be a girl cause they had long hair, and just started to kiss and make out with through the mask for about 10 seconds. When they were done, they just walked away waving bye at me, and I never saw them again. I told my dad, and he thought I was full of BS, and I was joking and joining in on the killer clown trend. The next day, I went to school and told every single one of my friends, which none of them believed me. They kept asking questions like, "Do you have a picture? Do you have security footage?" To which I responded no to all of them. And well, they ended up not believing my encounter with those 3 people in clown masks. TLDR, I saw 3 people in clown masks in my backyard making out during the 2016 killer clown craze. U/Mellikid responded, "I had an experience with a ghost as a teen, 15. Our backyard dipped into the ravine with the creek below, and that winter a child had drowned in the creek. They were digging through the ice in several spots downstream where they thought his body might have gotten stuck, and they eventually found him downstream from where lived. My bedroom faced the back of the house, and I would always look at the ravine one last time before closing my curtains and going to bed. One of those nights, after they'd finished searching for the day, I looked out the window as usual and saw the form of someone smaller than me looking in. I yanked the curtains shut and jumped under my blankets. When I told my mother the next day, she was surprised as she'd felt something too. They found his body shortly after that. Of course, I always have reasonable doubt towards ghost encounters, and the chances of proving they exist are slim, but dang it, it sure felt real. Thanks for watching, everyone. Like and subscribe for more videos like this one. If you enjoyed this video and want to dive even deeper into our community, consider becoming a channel member. Members get exclusive perks like early access to videos, custom emojis, shoutouts, etc. And it's a great way to support the channel so I can keep bringing you the content you love.